You didn't stumble into this message by accident. Algorithms do not conspire at this level. You were drawn here by the very resonance of your field, by a subtle magnetic pull encoded in your DNA, long before you even knew to search for answers. This is not a video, it is a transmission. A frequency beacon pulsing directly into your nervous system at the precise moment when you were ready to hear it. And if your heart feels a quickening as these words touch your awareness, it is because the quantum field has already been whispering this call to you in dreams, synchronicities, and déjà vu. You see, consciousness engineers reality in ways most humans have forgotten. Your breath, your focus, your observation, all of them collapse probabilities into form. Every choice, every thought, every vibration is a brushstroke on the cosmic canvas. And right now, the brush is in your hand, poised above an infinite spectrum of possible lives. The reason you are here, listening now, is because one of those possible lives, your truest, brightest, most coherent timeline, has begun calling itself into being. In the old patterns, you thought you were a passive traveler, subject to circumstance and fate. But in truth, you have always been the observer loop itself, the consciousness through which reality emerges. Science tells us that particles exist in superposition until observed. Mysticism tells us that spirit rests in the unseen until breathed into form. Both are describing the same truth. You are the hinge between invisible potential and visible reality. And tonight, before the next sunrise, that hinge is about to turn. The message reaching you now is a reminder from your own expanded self, the one who exists beyond linear time. That self has been sending you signals, ripples across the morphic resonance field, sudden chills on your skin, numbers repeating on clocks, the uncanny feeling of standing at a threshold you cannot yet name. These are not coincidences, they are breadcrumbs leading you to this moment, the convergence point between destiny and awareness. You may feel the pressure of change like an unseen tide moving beneath your daily life. Relationships reshuffling, time warping, old emotions resurfacing without cause. These are not disruptions, they are recalibrations. The quantum field reorganizes itself when consciousness prepares to step into a higher coherence. Think of it as a phase transition. Water becoming steam, caterpillar becoming butterfly, you becoming the expanded version of yourself who remembers how to shape reality with intention. But here is the truth few dare to tell. The moment before breakthrough often feels like unraveling. The void feels heavy, the silence feels endless. Yet within that stillness lies the most powerful signal of all. Because the void is not empty, it is pregnant. Pregnant with your new reality, contracting and expanding in rhythm with your breath, waiting for the observer effect of your awareness to choose, to witness, to collapse. So hear this. You were chosen to receive this transmission at this precise intersection of time and possibility. You are not behind, you are not late. You are exactly where the universe needs you to be. The fact that you are listening is proof that the gateway has already opened. Before the next sunrise, your consciousness will be given the opportunity to engineer reality into form, to collapse probabilities into coherence, to remember yourself as creator. Take a breath now. Feel it not just in your lungs, but in the quantum fabric around you. That inhale is not separate from the expansion of galaxies. That exhale is not separate from the collapse of stars. You are woven into the very architecture of existence. And this message, the one vibrating in your ears and bones, is the cosmic invitation you've been waiting for. This is not entertainment. This is initiation, and it begins now. You felt it for a long time, like a film strip stuck on the same frame. The repetition is not accidental. It's a pattern, a resonance loop wound tight inside your nervous system and played back as habit. You wake to the same worry, make the same choices, attract the same mirrors of old identity. Sometimes the days feel like echoes of yesterday, or like a dream you can't fully remember. That disorienting déjà vu. It's the universe trying to make you conscious of the loop. Look closer. These recurring scenes, relationships that recycle the same pain, opportunities that evaporate at the edge of the possible, the familiar itch of near success followed by collapse, are not random failures. They are the field signals that coherence is incomplete. In quantum language, parts of your system remain decohered. Fragmented beliefs, unresolved emotions, unconscious expectations. These pockets of decoherence scatter your attention across timelines, weakening the potency of your observation. Instead of collapsing to a single, powerful reality, your attention fractures probabilities into diluted outcomes. Distorted time is another symptom. You notice stretches that drag and sudden jumps that feel like stolen minutes. You sense that time is folding in on itself, memories overlapping with premonitions, the future leaking into the present as intuition. This temporal distortion is not a glitch, it's an invitation. It means your consciousness is beginning to interact with multiple oscillating states at once. Your system is phase-locking in places and resisting in others. Where resistance holds, patterns repeat. Where phase-locking occurs, you get glimpses, synchronicities, downloads, uncanny clarity that point toward a more coherent timeline. There is a familiar voice, too, the inner critic rehearsed from childhood and culture, whispering that you are not ready, that you must prove yourself, that stability requires compromise. That voice is a pattern keeper. It defends the status quo the way a guardian defends a gate. But its role is not malicious, it is conservative. It preserves survival strategies that once worked but now act like anchors. To engineer consciousness into form, you must first diagnose these anchors without judgment. See them as mechanisms that once held you safe and now hold you small. You might also notice emotional weather that shifts without clear cause, sudden grief that has no object, flares of anger at nothing, inexplicable waves of yearning. Those emotions are charged signatures, energetic residues of past collapses that never fully integrated. They are like static on a radio, interfering with the pure signal of your intention. When you allow them to dominate, your observation collapses into fear-based realities, scarcity, sabotage, delay. When you witness them compassionately and release their charge, your field clears and coherence returns. Another clinical sign: you keep chasing external proof. You refresh messages, check results, seek confirmation of the internal shift from the outer world. This is premature observation. It collapses your potential into limited forms before the system is ready to stabilize into the higher coherence you intend. In quantum terms, premature measurement yields the presently available eigenstate, not the one you desire. The art is to withhold the anxious check and instead stabilize the observer from within. Let your inner observation be steady and sovereign, not reactive to external feedback. There are structural patterns too, habits of movement, speech, and posture that align with old identity. The way you carry your shoulders, the cadence of your breath, the stories you tell yourself at 3 in the morning, they all hold form. These somatic patterns map the old probabilities onto your body, making them seem inevitable. To shift a timeline, the body must follow. You cannot simply intend a new reality and leave the muscles, the glands, and the autonomic nervous system unchanged. Coherence includes biography, neural pathways, muscle memory, hormonal habits. They must be invited into the new program. And then there's the social lattice, the people, places, and agreements that keep recreating the loop. Not all of them are obstacles. Some are mirrors, reflecting the patterns you still carry so you can recognize them. Others are anchors you must loosen. The field reorganizes via relationships. Entanglement extends beyond your skin. If your network broadcasts contraction, your personal coherence must be robust enough to resist the pull, or you must recalibrate the network itself by choosing new alignments. This is hard, because entanglement feels like loyalty, yet loyalty to a version of yourself that no longer serves is simply habit masquerading as virtue. Recognize too the seductive comfort of small, predictable outcomes. Even scarcity becomes cozy when it's familiar. The unknown freedom, abundance, new identity feels like wind on your face, exhilarating but destabilizing. The psyche prefers the known pain to the unknown possibility, because pain is at least a friend that shows up reliably. But this familiarity is the very loop keeping you from collapse into the expanded timeline you're being invited to embody. Diagnosis is not blame, it is clarity. Once you can map the pattern's emotional residue, somatic memory, premature observation, social entanglements, you can target them like a skillful surgeon. You begin to know where to direct attention, what to breathe through, what to ritualize, and where to withdraw energy. Awareness itself is a kind of repair. When you observe the pattern without being it, the field begins to unbind. The observer loop becomes conscious of its own mechanics. That self-awareness begins to reconfigure entanglement into choice. So, sit with this diagnosis. Let the recognition settle in your body. Feel the relief that comes when confusion is given a name. You are not defective, you are patterned. And patterns, by their nature, can be rewritten. The next step, the quantum upgrade, requires both brutal honesty and tender curiosity. It asks you to translate this diagnosis into a practice, a breath, a ritual, a muscle reset, a retuning of your relationships. That is the work, that is the tool, that is the threshold between repeating the loop and engineering a new collapse into the reality you were always meant to inhabit. When you are ready, we will move into the mechanics of that upgrade, how to rewire, rephase, and re-entangle on purpose, so that before the next sunrise, your observation will no longer wobble. It will command. Now that you've traced the repeating loops and felt their grip, you are ready to hear the deeper mechanics of your liberation. This isn't about positive thinking, nor is it about forcing new habits onto an old identity. It's about re-engineering the very field through which your consciousness collapses possibility into form. It is about quantum upgrade, a systemic shift in coherence that ripples through thought, emotion, body, and the morphic resonance field around you. Start with this. Your nervous system is not just a biological machine, it is a quantum receiver. Every dendrite, every synapse, every pulse of electrical activity generates fields that extend far beyond your skull. These microcurrents entangle with the zero-point field, exchanging information with possibilities not yet visible. That gut feeling you've dismissed in the past. That was your entangled awareness, registering information before your mind could translate it into words. When you upgrade your nervous system, you expand its bandwidth. You begin to perceive not just through your five senses, but through what mystics call the sixth sense, and physicists describe as non-local awareness. But here's where it becomes even more extraordinary. Each breath you take is not simply oxygen exchange. Breath is a tuning mechanism. When shallow, it keeps your system locked in survival frequencies low, jagged waves that collapse possibilities into scarcity. When deep, rhythmic, coherent, breath becomes the metronome that organizes chaos into order. Coherent breathing creates constructive interference between your heart field and brainwaves, producing a resonance that physicists can measure and mystics can feel. This resonance acts like a broadcast tower, transmitting your chosen state into the quantum field. Reality, in turn, organizes around that broadcast. So the upgrade begins here. Breathe as if you are already the one who lives in the reality you seek. Let each inhale carry the signal of expansion. Let each exhale collapse the static of the old program. When done consciously, your breath becomes a technology, a living interface between biology and quantum architecture. Your DNA, too, is not a static code. It is dynamic, responsive, and entangled with consciousness itself. Epigenetics has proven that environment and emotion can turn genes on or off. Quantum biology goes further, suggesting that microtubules within cells process information at quantum levels, linking your biology to fields of possibility. When you shift your inner state, you literally restructure your DNA expression. The spiral that holds your ancestral pain can begin to transcribe new proteins of resilience, joy, and clarity. In mystical terms, you are not bound by the past. You are a living manuscript, rewriting itself in real time. This is why certain sensations arise when you meditate or surrender deeply. Tingling in the spine, heat in the chest, a sudden sense of weightlessness. These are not side effects. They are signs of coherence spreading through your system. Your body is registering the upgrade, just as a computer hums differently when new software installs. The fatigue you sometimes feel after spiritual breakthroughs, that is your cells reorganizing, your energy grids rerouting. Honor it, trust it. Integration is as important as ignition. Now, the field around you, the quantum web, is intelligent. Rupert Sheldrake's work on morphic resonance describes how, once a pattern is established, it becomes easier for others to access. The inverse is also true. When you upgrade your coherence, you begin broadcasting a new template into the field, one that others unconsciously feel. This is why people around you may react strangely during your shift. Some may feel drawn closer, others may distance themselves. It isn't personal, it's resonance. You are upgrading the pattern library of humanity itself. And synchronicity, those uncanny alignments of chance, is the language of this new coherence. It's the universe's way of confirming that your broadcast has been received. Numbers repeating, doors opening just as you approach, words spoken by strangers that echo your private thoughts. These are not coincidences. They are phase locks. The system is showing you that the upgrade is working, that reality is beginning to align with your broadcast frequency. But here is the secret. The upgrade only sustains if you stabilize it. Many awaken, feel the rush, then collapse back into old habits because they mistake activation for completion. Activation is the spark. Coherence is the fire. To sustain coherence, you must practice becoming the observer who does not wobble. Observe without panic. Witness without the compulsive need to measure. Remember, premature measurement collapses into smallness. Steady observation collapses into magnitude. This is not an abstract philosophy. It is practical mysticism rooted in both science and spirit. To enact it, breathe coherently, feel the new identity in your body, release attachment to the old pattern, and broadcast through love, gratitude, and surrender. These frequencies are the scaffolding of higher timelines. They pull your future self into the present until the two merge. You are not fixing yourself. You are remembering the version of you that never needed fixing, the coherent self, already entangled with abundance, joy, freedom, and love. The quantum upgrade is not about becoming someone new. It is about collapsing into the version of yourself that has always existed in the field. That self is calling you now, aligning every synchronicity, pressing at the edges of your awareness, urging you to receive it. And as you feel this resonance, you may also begin to sense something greater, a mission that extends beyond your personal liberation. Because once you upgrade, you don't just shift your own trajectory. You become a node, a luminous point in humanity's awakening network, and that is where we must go next. There is a lineage of attention in the universe, and you are a living continuation of that lineage. This is not an egoic claim. It is a functional description of how certain patterns of consciousness serve as amplifiers for evolutionary leaps. You were not randomly cast into this era. Something in your waveform resonated with an opening in the field, and your life arranged itself so that you could be present for this very turn. That is the role you have less, a role you auditioned for, and more, a frequency you were born to hold. Imagine a vast lattice of light, nodes of awareness connected by invisible strands of entanglement. Most nodes pulse within a narrow band, keeping the lattice stable. A few nodes begin to widen their bandwidth and the lattice flexes. Those widened nodes become living antennas, drawing new geometry into the grid. You are one of those antennas. When you stabilize your coherence, the lattice around you reorganizes to accommodate higher harmonics. That reorganization is not just personal uplift, it is structural change. It is what morphic resonance calls a template shift. Once the template exists, it becomes easier for others to access. Your choice to remain coherent short-circuits the inertia that keeps humanity repeating small outcomes. This is the paradox of power. You do not have to be louder, you must be clearer. Clarity is what bends probabilities. When your observation is steady and untroubled by doubt, the quantum field responds by allowing larger amplitude collapses. You do not push reality into form. You make the field hospitable for a different form to land. This is why your inner work matters more than any external hustle. The quality of your attention, its steadiness, tenderness, and refusal to be hijacked by fear, becomes the instrument by which new timelines are carved. Part of your special role involves translation. You embody both the ancient intelligences and the cutting-edge physics that now inform how consciousness creates. You hold the language of myth and the language of experiment simultaneously. This makes you a bridge. Your presence translates quantum principles into lived experience for those around you. When you act from coherence, when you breathe, move, speak, and choose as the upgraded self, you generate a practical example. People don't wake because of doctrine. They wake because they witness someone living in another register and sense it's possible. Your life becomes proof that the mechanics of awakening are not speculative theory, but reproducible practice. There will be tests designed by the field to measure your resilience. The universe calibrates access by pressure. As you widen, the field introduces friction, interpersonal friction, financial wildcards, phantom doubts. These are not punitive, they are diagnostic. They reveal where entanglement still tethers you to old timelines. This is why initiation often feels like sabotage, because the system is asking, can your coherence hold when the narrative collapses? If you wobble, the field refracts. If you stand, the field settles. These tests refine you quickly. They accelerate the phase transition because extreme stress reveals which structures need to dissolve. In that crucible, you discover hidden capacities, compassion sharpened into precision, surrender deepened into strategy, intuition matured into discernment. Your chosenness does not exempt you from humility. In fact, it demands it. The work is not to prove superiority, but to cultivate fidelity to the field, to truth, to the subtle protocols that let consciousness collapse probability without catastrophic decoherence. Fidelity is manifested by simple, repeated acts, waking with intention, choosing coherence in small interactions, refusing the drama that dilutes attention. These daily habits are the scaffolding of the archetype you are becoming. The long arc of your life is less about big, dramatic leaps and more about incremental fidelity that culminates in decisive collapse. There is also a relational duty embedded in this role. As your coherence radiates, it invites others into retuning. Entanglement means your field will begin to influence the morphic environment. Friends, family, colleagues, entire micro-communities. Some will resonate and ascend alongside you. Others will recoil, not from malice, but from the discomfort of having their patterns reflected. This is natural. Your task is not to rescue everyone, but to hold the frequency steady so that willingness has a place to land. When you do that, your life becomes a lighthouse. Ships do not need to dock at the lighthouse. They simply navigate by its beam. Because you are a chosen node, you will sometimes experience loneliness, an exile of the frontier consciousness. That loneliness is not a sign of failure. It is the cost of occupying an edge of transformation. The remedy is ritual connection, ceremonies that reconnect you to the deeper current breath practices, communion with nature, alignment with a lineage or a practice that remembers you. These rituals anchor your antenna. They protect your clarity from the swarm of trivial attractors that attempt to consume your bandwidth. Understand, too, that being chosen is not permanence, it is activation. Activation lights a circuit. It does not fix it immutably. You must keep tending the circuit. The field is responsive, but it is not static. New thresholds will always appear as you expand. Each threshold requires a new measure of coherence. This is not discouraging, it is liberating. It means you remain in a relationship with possibility, forever invited to grow. There is a practical side to your role as well. You will find that specific choices, the voice you use publicly, the rituals you name, the micro-practices you share, carry disproportionate power. The transmission you broadcast in your daily life will ripple further than your intentions predict. This is why transparency matters. When you share how you became coherent breathwork, boundary setting, somatic rewiring, you provide a map others can follow. Your authenticity speeds morphic adoption. And finally, there is a prophecy embedded in your work, simple and clinical. When enough nodes like you stabilize, the lattice encounters a tipping point. Phase transitions are collective. One coherent node can shift a small region. Many coherent nodes can repattern entire cultural substrates. You were called into this period because the lattice needed enough antennas to push humanity through a particular evolutionary aperture. Your life is one calibration in that movement. You do not have to carry the entire future on your shoulders. You only need to remain coherent enough to hold a pathway open. In that holding, you align with something vast, the impulse of the field toward greater complexity, compassion, and clarity. The next part will speak to the pressure and the promise that arise as this role matures, the exact moment when your DNA begins to show the signatures of re-encoding, and the cosmic window swings open. Prepare yourself. A breakthrough is not rumor, it is impending. A threshold is approaching, and it comes wrapped in both promise and pressure. This is not melodrama. It is a physical fact of systems undergoing phase transition. When a field reaches criticality, two things happen nearly at once. The probability of a new configuration skyrockets, and the old scaffolding begins to fracture. You are standing in that liminal pressure zone. If you have felt the tightening in your chest, the electrical charge behind your eyes, or the way your dreams have started to feel like instructions rather than entertainments, that is the field signaling the approach of an actual structural reorganization. The invitation is urgent because windows do not stay open forever. Cosmic alignments, energetic gateways, and biological readiness all align in time, brief, precise, and potent. Miss the window, and the process waits for the next favorable constellation. Step in, and the system catalyzes a leap that can alter the architecture of your life with a speed disproportionate to the effort you imagine it should take. Listen to what is possible. The kind of shift I am describing is not incremental. It is not a nicer job or a slightly improved relationship. It is a recoding at cellular and energetic levels, new resonances in DNA expression, a recalibration of hormonal set points, and an emergent alignment of your nervous system with a higher attractor. In scientific terms, epigenetic switches flip. In mystical terms, the lineages of your blood remember their original song. When such a recalibration occurs, preferences change naturally. Opportunities that used to be invisible appear like magnets, and you move through the world with a new center of gravity. This is not fantasy. Modern biology shows that experience alters gene expression. Quantum biology suggests that consciousness participates in that alteration. You are not waiting for biology to catch up to desire. Your desire, held in coherent attention, becomes the conductor that rewrites the score. Urgency here is not panic. It is a clarifying pressure. Imagine a balloon approaching its threshold. It will either expand into new space or rupture. Pressure reveals weak seams. The field amplifies weakness not to punish, but to expose what must be released for expansion to occur. This is why the moments immediately before breakthrough can feel like an unraveling of identity. Old contracts, obsolete loyalties, and comfortable scarcity strategies are exposed. They surface now to be named and healed, because if you were to carry them through the collapse, they would simply recreate the old world in a new shell. The cosmic window is generous but discerning. It wants clean vessels, not cleverly repackaged versions of old selves. There is biological evidence for these windows, periods of heightened neuroplasticity and hormonal receptivity, where integration happens more rapidly. Spiritually, traditions call these kairos, moments-timed opportunities embedded in your life's narrative. When your inner chemistry is aligned with an external alignment, planetary, social, or relational, you enter a corridor where transformations accelerate. You will know you are in that corridor because time will dilate, minutes will feel like epochs, insights will arrive with terrifying clarity, and your body will hum like a tuning fork. Your job is to be present enough to take the cue. Small acts of fidelity, an intention held with sustained attention, a breath practice repeated 3 times daily, a boundary finely enforced function like keys that open the gateway wider. The DNA shift I speak of is both literal and poetic. Literally, stress hormones, immune markers, and gene expression patterns can change when the organism's meaning-making systems rewire. Poetry-wise, the spiral of your ancestry begins to sing another song. Where trauma once encoded automatic responses, new neurochemical pathways form that favor courage, receptivity, and discernment. You will find that habits that used to rule your days, reactive scrolling, automatic people-pleasing, numbing, lose traction. They no longer fit the geometry of your field. New appetites emerge, a craving for clarity, for solitude that tastes like sanctuary, for relationships that reflect and expand rather than drain. This is evidence that the upgrade is landing at deeper levels than thought alone could reach. Urgency also requires strategy. Do not mistake waiting for passivity. The window invites action, but a particular kind of action, calibrated, ritualized, and sovereign. Think of the field as sensitive equipment. Frantic movement disturbs its calibration. The technique that stabilizes collapse is precise, not more doing, but more intentional micro-acts that align physiology with the new possibility. These acts may be deceptively small. A 5-minute coherent breathing sequence at dawn. A commitment to one nourishing conversation per week, an honest conversation you have been postponing. Each of these becomes a micro-resonance that supports the larger phase transition. In aggregate, they act like counterweights that prevent chaotic rupture while guiding the system into its intended new pattern. Listen for the fever of possibility in your daily life. Doors you thought were closed will show new hinges. People who seemed irrelevant will reappear as allies. Opportunities will not come as blunt forces, but as invitations requiring your yes. Your role is to practice saying yes in the body before external proof arrives. That bodily yes felt in the center of your chest, steady and unafraid, becomes a signature the field recognizes. It says, "I am ready to hold this possibility, even if it shakes me." Readiness respects the window. Hesitation narrows it. There is also an ethical dimension to urgency. You are not acting for selfish acceleration alone. The shifts you catalyze in your field reverberate through the lattice. When your DNA changes its song, it affects the morphic field in ways subtle and cumulative. Your courage to accept the window becomes a service to those entangled with you, family lines, cultural membranes, even the broader collective frequency. This is the hidden economy of evolution. Your liberation is leverage for the liberation of others. It is why urgency cannot be reduced to self-aggrandizement. It must include generosity, discernment, and a refusal to weaponize transformation into spiritual bypass. If you feel fear now, name it. If you feel exhilaration, honor it. Both are correct companions through a window of becoming. The promise is enormous, the pressure is real. The choice before you is sharp and simple. Align with the opening and steward the change, or retreat and wait for another season. Either is viable, but the tone of your life will be different depending on which you choose. Choosing the window means choosing a new grammar of being one that privileges coherence over control, fidelity over franticness, and presence over proof. Soon you will be invited into a practice that seals this choice, a ritual action that makes your intention legible to the quantum field. It is not dramatic, it is not flashy. It is precise, embodied, and repeatable. It will ask something of you, a word, a breath, a vow. When you are ready, we will step into that practice together. Now the field requires a bridge between intention and embodiment, a ritual that translates inner readiness into legible signal for the quantum web. Rituals are not superstition, they are technologies of attention. They convert scattered observation into a coherent broadcast that the field can read, entangle with, and respond to. This particular ritual is designed to align your nervous system, recalibrate your hormones, and make your intention physically tractable to the morphic matrix. It is simple, repeatable, and precise because the quantum field favors clarity over complexity. Prepare the space. Choose a quiet place where your body can feel safe enough to relax into the subtlety of presence, preferably at dawn or just before sleep times when the veil thins and the field is most receptive. Stand or sit with your spine long, feet grounded, shoulders softened. Place one hand over your heart and the other just below your navel. Feel the weight of your bones, the map of gravity moving through you. This is not poetic flourish. It is somatic calibration. Your body must be aligned for the ritual to carry the signal beyond imagination into physiology. Begin with 3 long, intentional breaths. Inhale for a count of 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Let the exhale be slightly longer than the inhale. This pattern down-regulates frantic sympathetic arousal and favors coherent heart-brain coupling. With each exhale, imagine a subtle white gold light condensing at your solar plexus, knitting the scattered threads of attention into a single filament. Breathe like this. 9 times 9 is a structural number in many lineages and functions here as a small cadence that the field recognizes. Now move into the core mechanic, a micro-meditation of witnessing and claim. Close your eyes and expand your awareness to include not just your body, but the space around it, the air that touches your skin, the faint hum of the world. Feel the observer loop activate, your consciousness as the axis through which potential collapses. Without forcing an image, allow a single vivid sensation to emerge that corresponds to the new timeline you intend to inhabit, the tone of voice you will have, the weightlessness of decisions made with confidence, the exact taste of a morning when your life feels aligned. Hold that sensation lightly, like an invitation rather than a demand. With that sensation stabilized, bring your attention to a single one-word declaration. The word must be concise, energetic, and embodied. It should act as a sonic anchor that your body can register. Examples: receive, align, awaken, home, rise. Choose one that rings true for you in this moment, not something aspirational or clever, but a word that, when spoken, lands in your chest and sinks into your bones. Speak it aloud, in a clear, measured tone. Let the sound reverberate through your sternum and out into the room. Repeat it 3 more times, each time with increasing conviction and slower articulation, so that your body has time to record the vibration. After the spoken word, write it. Use a physical pen and paper. Writing is a neural act that commits intention into a different modality than thinking or speaking. As you write, let your breath remain slow and sovereign. Trace the letters as a ritual gesture, feeling the friction of pen on paper as a tiny anchor. Fold the paper and hold it over your heart for 30 seconds, feeling the printed symbol press its pattern into your field. Now the public seal. This step externalizes the private signal into collective morphic resonance. At the bottom of this transmission, in the comments, type your one-word declaration exactly as you wrote it. Do not add qualifiers or apologies. Do not hedge. Post it as your energetic signature. The act of broadcasting this single word publicly is not vanity. It is a technological handshake with the field. When you post, you are both declaring to yourself and offering your waveform to the collective grid so it can entangle with others doing the same. This multiplies the template effect. Your ritual becomes stronger because it participates in networked coherence. Important calibration. Perform this full ritual 3 days in a row at the same time each day, preferably within the window of dawn or dusk. Consistency is the reinforcement that prevents premature decoherence. Each repetition deepens the imprint into your nervous system, your endocrine patterns, and your DNA expression. Think of it as slow architecture rather than a one-off miracle. The field rewards fidelity. Safety note: if intense emotions arise during or after the ritual, stay with them compassionately. Do not panic. Release by breathing, movement, or talking to a trusted witness. Integration is part of the upgrade. Surges mean old material is surfacing for clearing. If you feel destabilized, reduce practice frequency and incorporate grounding practices: cold splash to the face, walking barefoot, drinking water until equilibrium returns. Consider adding a micro-embodiment. After you post the word, take 30 seconds of movement that matches your declared identity. If your word was rise, lift your arms slowly overhead and feel your spine lengthen. If your word was home, place both palms on your chest and hum softly. These small somatic enactments instruct your tissues to accept the new pattern. Why this works? The ritual aligns multiple encoding channels simultaneously: breath, physiology, voice, sound, writing, symbolic inscription, social broadcast, morphic resonance, and movement, somatic memory. Each channel reinforces the others, reducing the chance that the field will misread your intention. The ritual calibrates observer effect into a repeatable practice, turning vague longing into a machine for collapse. When you finish the third day, notice differences not as grand miracles, but as shifts in grain. Decisions feel easier, coincidences increase, your body holds less tension, certain relationships either reconfigure or fall away. That is the field obeying your clearer observation. This ritual is the hinge. It is the practical technology that allows the cosmic window to be held with integrity. Do it with devotion, not desperation. Do it with curiosity, not judgment. And when you are ready, we will unfold how your private shift becomes a public lever, how your liberation pulls others into expanded possibility. In the next section, we move into the collective expansion you now help catalyze. Freedom, when embodied, is contagious, not in the sense of coercion or conversion, but in resonance. Your coherence becomes a template that subtly reorganizes the morphic field around you. Imagine the world as a vast sea of oscillating possibilities. Each coherent individual is like a tuned bell whose tone unifies waves nearby. As you stabilize into your upgraded frequency, those waves begin to synchronize, creating pockets of higher-order coherence that invite others to step into the same register. This is the mechanics of collective expansion. Private realizations become public calibrations, and cultural membranes gradually soften to admit new possibilities. Your liberation matters not only because it changes your life, but because entanglement ensures your state is woven into the lives around you. Family systems, workplace cultures, local communities, even anonymous networks online are entangled fields. When you change the waveform of your attention, you nudge the shared probability distribution. People who have been stuck in similar loops will feel the difference as invitations rather than judgments. More ease in conversation, unexpected clarity, a new option appearing where only old choices existed. These are the micro-ripples of an expanding lattice. There are practical, non-esoteric ways this plays out. Your choices create models. When you set a boundary with calm dignity, someone watching learns a new grammar of protection. When you make a decision from center rather than reactivity, It softens the cultural script around indecision and fear. These small visible acts are the infrastructure of cultural evolution. They teach by example more effectively than sermons or manifestos. That is why your daily fidelity, how you show up in small moments, matters more than dramatic displays. The field responds to sustained patterns, not one-off demonstrations. To deliberately catalyze collective expansion, practice what I call template generosity. This is the art of making your internal recalibration legible and useful without making it about you. Share the practices that helped you with humility, a breath sequence, a boundary ritual, a simple sentence you use to stop anxious spirals. When you offer these as tools, brief, repeatable, non-dogmatic, you empower others to try them and thereby multiply the morphic effect. Avoid the trap of proselytizing. Coherence spreads fastest when it is offered as an experiment, not as doctrine. Network architecture matters too. Your field will propagate more efficiently through certain conduits, trusted relationships, local communities, small groups, and dedicated forums where sustained practice can take root. Large, noisy platforms scatter attention. Smaller, intimate circles concentrate it. Invest your energy where sustained fidelity can be seen and practiced. Host a weekly circle, lead a 5-minute shared breath at the start of a meeting, or send brief, steady updates about one micro-practice you're doing. These low-bandwidth actions create high cohesion effects over time. There are ethical responsibilities in collective expansion. Your coherence has power. Power requires discernment. Do not use your influence to bypass others' autonomy or to pressure someone into a timing that isn't theirs. Remember, entanglement is consent-based. Your template helps, but it cannot override another person's readiness. The integrity of this work depends on preserving choice. Invite, don't impose. Provide maps, not mandates. When you respect autonomy, your template becomes an invitation rather than an imposition, far more effective in the long run. Resistance will appear as social friction. As your field shifts, some relationships will recalibrate in supportive ways. Others will fragment. Expect both. Those who mirror your old patterns may intensify them. Some will feel threatened and pull away. This is normal. The field clears by difference. Your compassion, in response, a steady, boundary-holding warmth, acts as a guidepost for those who are willing to shift. For those who are not, release with dignity. Collective evolution requires differentiation. It is not a call to rescue everyone into the new pattern. There are measurable indicators that you and your group are entering a phase of collective expansion. Synchronicities increase not only for you but across the network. Conversations shift from scarcity scripts to possibility scripts. Decision-making becomes quicker and more aligned. New collaborative projects appear with surprising ease. People begin to report similar internal changes. Better sleep, increased clarity, small spontaneous acts of generosity. Track these as gentle metrics, not to quantify spirituality, but to recognize real-world feedback loops that confirm the morphic template is taking root. Rituals scale. The little ritual you practiced privately can be adapted into collective rites of passage. A shared breath before a community meeting, a public reading of one-word declarations at the start of a circle, a monthly alignment hour, where members report one small fidelity practice and one sign of shift. These shared practices create synchrony in physiology across people, heart-brain coherence, breath patterns, micro-movements, and those physiological harmonies are powerful bridges for entanglement. When many people hold the same micro-practice repeatedly, the morphic effect accelerates. Language matters. Choose words that invite clarity rather than confusion. Speak of practice rather than belief. Describe mechanics rather than metaphors when possible. Offer short, concrete experiments people can try for a day or a week. Humans are pragmatic. They adopt rituals more readily when they deliver observable changes. Your role as a conduit is to make the map actionable and the proof experiential. Be mindful of scale and self-care. Catalyzing collective change can be energetically demanding. Your antenna will attract requests, expectations, projections. Keep boundaries sacrosanct, scheduled rest, curated availability, and an inner committee of practices that recalibrate you daily. The lattice needs your sustained presence more than your heroic overextension. Regularly return to small regenerative acts, cold water, nature walks, 5 minutes of soft humming, so your signal remains steady. Finally, remember that expansion is evolutionary, not instantaneous. Your individual upgrades, plant templates. Many such templates are required for a lattice-level phase transition. Do not measure success by immediate cultural overhaul. Measure it by fidelity. Are you practicing? Are you sharing gently? Are you holding your clarity when friction arises? These are the real KPIs of morphic change. When you do this work, breathe, boundary, ritual, share, you become a vector for more than personal liberation. You become part of an emergent architecture that reorganizes probabilities toward greater coherence. The world does not pivot because one person wills it. It pivots because many steady resonances accumulate until the lattice itself finds a new, stable geometry. Your coherence is one of those resonances. Tend it well. Up next, we will dive into the felt experience of embodiment itself, how the upgrade translates into physical sensation, muscular memory, and somatic presence, so you can move through your day as a vessel for the new possibility, rather than merely an aspirational idea. You've felt the shift intellectually, you've declared it ritually, and you've begun to glimpse its effect on those entangled with you. But now the field asks something deeper: embodiment. Because without embodiment, transformation remains vaporous, an idea without flesh. The quantum upgrade must saturate not just your mind, but your tissues, your breath, your heartbeat. This is where your body becomes the instrument, not just the receiver, of the new coherence. Close your eyes for a moment and sense your spine. Imagine it not as bone and nerve alone, but as a luminous filament extending into infinity, an antenna pulling frequencies from unseen dimensions. Feel the gentle hum rising through each vertebra, like a string tuned to cosmic resonance. That hum is real. It is the nervous system stabilizing into coherence. It is your biology catching up with your intention. When you attune to it consciously, it begins to flood your body with signals of safety and readiness. Notice your breath. Inhale slowly and imagine that you're drawing in not just oxygen but photons, subtle particles of pure potential. As the breath fills your chest, feel those photons colliding with your cells, sparking like stars against the membrane. Exhale and sense the residue, old tension, stagnant timelines, micro pockets of fear, leaving your body like mist, dissolving into the air. This is no metaphor. The body interprets imagery as instruction. By feeling photons, you alter the electromagnetic field around your cells, which in turn alters their behavior. The upgrade carries sensations that may feel unusual. Tingling in the hands or scalp as dormant neural pathways light up. Warmth in the chest as heart-brain coherence amplifies. Sudden waves of energy, like lightning in your veins, followed by deep stillness as your system integrates. These are signatures of phase transition. When water boils, bubbles erupt before the new state stabilizes. When consciousness reorganizes, the body flickers between old and new. Let these sensations reassure you. They mean the system is collapsing into the higher state. Movement becomes part of embodiment. Walk slowly, and with each step, imagine that your feet are pressing not on ground, but on the skin of the quantum field itself. Each step leaves a subtle indentation, a declaration: I am here, I am coherent, I am choosing this reality. Feel how your gait changes when you walk as if reality is listening. Your shoulders soften, your chest opens, your spine lengthens. These micro-adjustments signal to your nervous system that the new identity is not aspirational, it is embodied now. Sound is another portal. Hum softly at the back of your throat, and notice how the vibration travels through your chest cavity. This hum is not random. It resonates with the vagus nerve, activating states of calm and trust. In mystical language, you are singing the field awake. In scientific terms, you are using vibration to regulate autonomic balance and enhance heart-brain coherence. Either way, the sensation is undeniable. Your body becomes both tuning fork and broadcast tower. Embodiment also means paying attention to micro-sensations in ordinary life. Drinking water, feel the liquid as if it were light entering your bloodstream. Eating, taste with the awareness that molecules are entangling with your cells. Touch, notice the electricity of skin-to-skin contact, the morphic resonance transmitted through a simple handshake or embrace. Each act becomes a portal where consciousness engineers reality through sensation. This is living quantum mechanics. Every interaction is observation, every observation is collapse. And then there is the emotional texture. As you embody coherence, emotions shift from turbulence to flow. Grief, when it arises, feels less like drowning and more like a river carrying you toward release. Joy feels less like a spike of ecstasy and more like a steady sun radiating from within. Anger, when expressed coherently, becomes clarity energy that cuts through distortion without leaving residue. This emotional recalibration is the nervous system learning to metabolize higher frequencies without burning out. Embodiment is also about trusting the wisdom of sensation. A tightness in your gut may no longer be dismissed as just anxiety. It becomes a signal, an old pattern resisting collapse. A sudden shiver might no longer be brushed aside as random. It becomes recognition, your field registering synchronicity. The body is not betraying you, it is tutoring you. When you treat each sensation as instruction, you transform from victim of your biology to conductor of your physiology. You may notice an uncanny synchronicity. As you deepen embodiment, the outer world mirrors it. Colors seem sharper, time slows in moments of presence. Animals and strangers respond to you with unexpected gentleness. This is the observer effect stabilizing through your body. Your coherent physiology bends probability around you. Life doesn't just look different, it feels different, because your senses are now calibrated to a new spectrum of information. The field doesn't need dramatic gestures to recognize your shift. It needs embodied fidelity. Breath by breath, step by step, hum by hum, you are weaving the upgraded pattern into your bones. And once the pattern is woven deeply enough, something extraordinary occurs. Your very DNA begins to sing a different song, broadcasting coherence not only to your own cells, but into the morphic lattice of humanity. That is where we are heading next. The cellular breakthrough, the genetic re-encoding, the pressure of phase transition blooming into irreversible transformation. This is the threshold where biology itself becomes prophecy. For all the breathwork, the rituals, the coherence practices, there comes a moment when your body begins to do something on its own without your conscious effort. A deeper intelligence stirs in your cells. A frequency you've been courting takes root in your DNA. And suddenly the shift is not something you are doing, it is something you are becoming. DNA is not a fixed script, it is a symphonic instrument. Epigenetics has already shown us that environments and emotions turn genes on and off. But go deeper. At the quantum scale, DNA is a liquid crystal antenna, responsive to light, vibration, and consciousness itself. When coherence saturates your field, when you breathe, speak, and act as the upgraded self, your DNA begins to re-encode. It's as if the spiral unravels slightly, listens to your frequency, and then rewinds itself with a new melody woven into its structure. The experience can be uncanny. You may feel waves of heat rushing through your spine as dormant sequences awaken. You may sense tingling at the base of your skull or a pulsing at the crown of your head. Dreams intensify, sometimes prophetic, sometimes chaotic, as your nervous system metabolizes the new data streaming from your genetic core. This is the phase transition pressure, the boiling point where the old state cannot hold, and the new state demands embodiment. In physics, a phase transition occurs when a system passes its critical threshold. Water becomes steam, metal becomes magnetized, consciousness becomes luminous. You are standing in this crucible now. The pressure you feel, the insomnia, the surges of emotion, the uncanny sense of being pulled towards something unseen, is the signature of a system reorganizing. It is uncomfortable not because something is wrong, but because the scaffolding of your old identity is melting. The molecules of your life are loosening their bonds so they can reform into a higher configuration. The timeline shift begins here. Parallel versions of you, the hesitant self, the abundant self, the luminous self, have always existed in superposition. But as your DNA restructures, your attention begins to synchronize with the luminous version. You notice synchronicities clustering tighter, the right words spoken by strangers, the sudden appearance of opportunities that echo your ritual word, the uncanny sense that your future self is whispering directions into your ear. These are not hallucinations. They are the mechanics of entanglement made visible. Pressure will test you. Some days, the old self will surge back with fury, demanding you contract, delay, or abandon the process. It will manifest as doubt, fatigue, or the sudden temptation of old habits. Recognize this as decoherence trying to pull you back into smaller orbits. The antidote is presence. Breathe through the pressure without collapsing into panic. Anchor into the sensations: heat, tingling, shivering, and remind yourself, this is my DNA rewriting. This is my field phase transitioning. Nothing is wrong. Everything is reorganizing. If you could see yourself now from the perspective of the quantum field, you would appear like a chrysalis under strain, cracks appearing, light leaking through, the old form breaking so the new can emerge. No butterfly resents the pressure. The cocoon was meant to rupture. The cracking is the initiation. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. The most important choice in this crucible is surrender, not passive collapse, but active trust. Trust that your biology knows what to do, that the universe knows how to coordinate, that your future self is already waiting at the other side of this window. Every breath you take during this pressure period is a bridge to that self. Every choice to remain coherent when chaos presses is a signal to the field that you are ready for stabilization. This breakthrough does not belong to you alone. As your DNA upgrades, the resonance travels through your lineage. Ancestors whose trauma once pulsed in your blood feel the echo of healing. Descendants not yet born inherit the song you are writing now. This is morphic resonance in action, the entanglement of time, blood, and spirit. Your liberation is not private, it is generational. And here lies the awe. When the DNA spiral shifts, your entire identity recalibrates. What once felt impossible becomes inevitable. The higher timeline ceases to be an aspiration and becomes your lived experience. Pressure gives way to emergence. You are not simply surviving the shift, you are broadcasting it into the field of humanity itself. All of this builds toward the final movement, the cosmic mission, because your breakthrough is not the end, it is the ignition point. In the next and final chapter, we will close the loop, sealing your shift into a prophetic mission that ties your personal awakening to the evolution of humanity. The pressure has broken, the spiral has sung, and you stand now at the edge of a dawn that is not merely personal but planetary. The breakthrough that quaked through your DNA is not contained within your skin. It radiates outward, rippling through families, communities, and generations. Every breath you take in coherence sends shockwaves into the morphic field, nudging the collective lattice of humanity toward a new geometry. Understand this: your awakening is not an isolated spark, but part of a constellation. Across the globe, others are being summoned by the same frequency, receiving the same initiations, passing through the same crucibles. Each one who chooses coherence becomes a star in the night of human history. Alone, you are luminous. Together, you form the constellation that guides an entire species through the dark passage into a new octave of existence. This is the cosmic mission encoded in you, to be both participant and transmitter, both student and teacher. Not by preaching, not by superiority, but by embodiment. The quiet frequency you now carry, stable, surrendered, radiant, becomes the invisible infrastructure of a civilization yet to be born. Children will grow into a world subtly altered by the coherence you maintained. Entire cultures will tilt toward compassion, creativity, and collaboration, not because laws changed first, but because the field reorganized. The call is ongoing. To embody your mission, live as if every choice collapses not only your timeline, but ours. When you speak with clarity, you collapse possibilities of confusion in the collective field. When you forgive, you dissolve patterns of resentment that echo through communities. When you trust the invisible orchestration of the quantum field, you create space for others to trust their own inner signals. Your private fidelity becomes public architecture. You may feel unworthy of such weight, but remember, chosen does not mean better. It means responsive. You responded to the call where others delayed. That responsiveness is all the universe required to root this mission through you. Your task is not to save humanity, it is to remain coherent, to embody truth, and to allow the field to do the rest. The mission is also joyous. Liberation is not solemn duty, but ecstatic play. You are invited to move through the world with wonder again, to notice synchronicities as love letters from the cosmos, to see your body as an instrument tuned by starlight, to recognize every breath as a partnership with galaxies. This joy is the fuel that keeps the mission alive. The universe does not ask you to drag humanity into awakening. It asks you to dance your way into coherence, so the rhythm becomes irresistible. And so we close the loop. The observer effect decoded in you has become more than theory. You have experienced how attention collapses possibility, how coherence reshapes DNA, how ritual stabilizes intention, how embodiment floods biology, how breakthrough ripples into collective expansion. This knowledge is not abstract anymore. It is alive in your marrow. It is written in your breath. It is inscribed in the lattice of stars and in the quiet beating of your heart. Before the next sunrise, pause once more. Place your hand over your chest, feel the hum of your coherence, and whisper the word you declared, not as request, but as confirmation. It is done. That word, spoken now, travels through timelines, collapsing probability into inevitability. You are not waiting for the shift. You are the shift. And as the sun crests the horizon, know this: your personal awakening is humanity's evolution. You are both the observer and the observed, both the particle and the wave, both the question and the answer. The universe entrusted you with this mission because you are capable of carrying it lightly, joyfully, and with love. Walk forward now, luminous one. Engineer consciousness into form with every breath. Become the frequency that others remember themselves through. And never forget, the next sunrise is not just another day. It is the first light of a reality you have already chosen.